Once upon a time, there was a tree that loved a girl. This tree stood in the center of a small village with about 9 houses. In one of those houses lived a young couple. They had a very young baby daughter named Polly. And every day, the mother would take Polly and lay her at the feet of the oak tree. And Polly would stare up at the sky through the leaves of the tree, and she would smile her dimpled smile, and she would coo and wave her fat little fist in the air. And the tree looked down on her and thought to itself, "This is the most beautiful baby in all the world." As Polly grew up, she continued to stay around the tree, and she would bring her skipping ropes and skip and play at the base of the tree. And when she was older, she would bring her school books and come and sit at the tree and read and study and learn and dream at the feet of the tree. And when Polly was even a little older, she would bring her hair ribbons and she would bring her clothes after washing them in the village fountain. And she would drape them over the limbs of the tree, and the tree made sure that no birds took off with her ribbons for nests, and the wind never messed with her clothes. And all the while, the tree made sure that the sun's harmful rays never bothered Polly, and if it rained, no drop of water ever hit her head. But girls tend to grow up a lot faster than trees do. And one day, Polly left the tree in the village to move to the city to seek her fortune. And the tree was heartbroken. Without Polly, the tree began to die. Its leaves turned brown and withered. They shriveled on the branches, and the branches hung low. The birds and squirrels who had made their homes in the tree began to get worried, frantically buzzing about, wondering, "What's going to happen to our fledglings? We built our nest here to keep them safe from hawks and owls. If the leaves are gone, what's going to protect them?" The wood dove flew to the tree and inquired, "What's wrong? Is there some worm eating at your roots? Is there some disease in your heart? What can we do?" And the tree replied, "I'm sad. Polly is gone." Well, the mourning dove knew that without Polly, the tree would lose its leaves, and a lot of them would be affected. And so he went to the tree and said, "Let's send her a message. Let's let her know that you miss her. Let's let her know that you love her." And so the tree rustled itself and shook free some of its leaves and called forth a big wind and blew these leaves to find Polly in the city. Well, Polly was walking along the street one day, and all of a sudden this big gust of wind came out of nowhere, swirling around her, and oak leaves swirled and caught in her hair. She pulled one out and looked at it. This leaf looks like one like we used to have at the tree back home. But there's not an oak tree around here for miles. Thinking it peculiar, she let the leaf drop and continued on her way. And the dove, who had followed the wind to see if she had gotten the message, flew back to the tree to let him know that she had not received it. And the tree grew sadder. The birds were getting very concerned at this point and went to the tree and said, "Please, please, tree, please keep your leaves green. Please keep them green just until our birds leave the nest, our fledglings leave the nest." And the tree said, "I can do that for you." Well, the dove was not going to give up, and he said to the tree, "Why don't we send her another message? Let's send her a gift, a present, something that she has to know came from you." And so that night, the tree sent a dream to the village carpenter. And in that dream, the village carpenter took one of the tree's limbs and fashioned it into a beautiful rocking chair that he took to the city and gave to Polly. So the next morning, the carpenter woke up and took his saw, and he sawed and he hacked, and the tree screamed and it trembled, and crack, one of the limbs fell off. And though it was in pain, The tree was happy. And the carpenter took that limb and he turned it into the most beautiful rocking chair that anyone had ever seen. And he packed it up on his mule and he started off towards the city to go take it to Polly. But on the way, the carpenter got greedy. Why should I take this rocking chair to Polly? Who is she to me? I bet I could sell it in the city and get enough money for another mule. And that's exactly what he did. The dove, who had followed to make sure that Polly had received the gift, saw him do this and flew back to the tree to let him know. Well, the tree was so upset and in such anguish that it tossed and it turned and it creaked and it let forth another cry and cracked another limb that landed splat on the village carpenter's house and tore it in two. And that night, when the carpenter returned with his extra mule, he arrived home to a demolished house and had nowhere to stay, so he had to leave. But the tree grew even sadder. And the mistletoe in the tops of the trees knew that if the tree itself died, it too would die. So it called to the dove and said, "Dove, please take my pearly seeds and berries and turn them into a necklace to give to Polly." And so the dove went and it found a long piece of grass and it brought it back and took the white pearly berries off the mistletoe and made a beautiful necklace. And so the dove carried the necklace to Polly. And as Polly was walking around the city one day, the bird expertly dropped it over her head. And Polly, surprised, exclaimed, "Where did this come from? Who has sent me such a beautiful gift, a beautiful present?" And looking around in surprise and joy, she saw no one standing around. And the dove saw how happy she was. And as she continued to walk along, a beautiful smile on her face, she came across a young man who thought she was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. And as these things tend to happen, he asked her to marry him, and she said yes. And the dove knew that her chances of coming back home were growing smaller and smaller. Well, Polly and her fiancé were married. And as they were talking about their family, Polly told him about this beautiful, quaint village that she grew up in, and this wonderful tree that she spent every day at. And she told him how she wanted her children to grow up with the same type of tree in the same type of place. And so he said, "Well, let's move back there." And so they packed up all of their belongings, and on a fine fall day when the leaves were starting to change and there was a crisp coolness in the air, they headed back to her village. And when they got there, they moved into the old village carpenter's house and fixed it up. And when the tree realized that Polly had come home to him, he was so excited that even though it was in the middle of fall and all the other trees were going bare for the winter, the sap shot through it, and all of a sudden the leaves started bursting forth from its branches, bright green, and just the most wonderful, wonderful springtime green that you could imagine. And the tree was so happy. Well, the next summer, Polly and her husband had a baby of their own. And every day, Polly would bring her baby and lay her at the feet of the tree. And her baby would stare up at the sky through the leaves and the limbs of the trees, and she would smile her dimpled smile and flash her baby blue eyes at the tree. And the tree looked down on her and thought to itself, "This is the most beautiful baby in all the world." The end.